Let Alayna sing, it'll be hilarious. The words sliced through the room like a blade. Madison's voice, laced with mockery, echoed through the sixth-grade classroom of Willowbrook Middle School. The other students snickered, some covering their mouths, others turning their heads to hide their grins. Alayna Carter, a 12-year-old black girl sitting near the window, froze. Her pencil stopped mid-scratch on the worn-out notebook she always carried. She didn't look up. She didn't need to. She could feel the eyes, dozens of them, all aimed her way like arrows. Madison Pearson, daughter of the local bank's CEO and self-proclaimed queen bee of the classroom, leaned back in her seat with a smug smile. Her perfectly curled blonde hair bounced as she laughed, flipping it over her shoulder dramatically. Mr. Halberd, their kind but often too gentle music teacher, raised a hand to calm the room. Now, he said, trying to ease the tension with a half smile. That's not a kind way to suggest someone. We want volunteers, not targets. But the damage had been done. The kids weren't suggesting Alayna because they believed she could sing. They just thought it would be funny to watch the poor shy girl embarrass herself. Funny to hear the daughter of a janitor croak a few off-key notes while they laughed in the background. Alayna's hands trembled beneath her desk. Not out of fear, no, she had grown used to being the punchline. But today stung worse. Today the shame wasn't just hers. Her mother had worked 2 jobs to get her those new sneakers, and Madison had already mocked them in the morning for being last season's clearance trash. Alayna, Mr. Halbert said gently, turning toward her. You don't have to, only if you want to. The room held its breath. Some kids were outright chuckling, others whispering behind cupped hands. But everyone was waiting for the moment she would say no and shrink back into her corner of invisibility. But she didn't. Slowly, Alayna stood up. The room went quiet, not out of respect, but confusion. She wasn't supposed to stand. She was supposed to pretend she didn't hear. She was supposed to let it pass, go back to being invisible. But Alayna had been invisible for too long. Her eyes met Mr. Halbert's, not pleading, not scared. Calm, composed. I'll sing, she said softly. Madison's eyebrows lifted in surprise, and a few students sat up straighter in their seats, their phones subtly aimed under desks, ready to record a disaster. Mr. Halbert hesitated for a second, then he nodded. Go ahead. She stepped to the front of the classroom. Her clothes were worn, a slightly oversized sweater with pilling threads and a skirt her mother had hemmed by hand. She didn't look like someone ready to perform. She looked like someone used to being ignored. But when she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, something shifted. Her small hands clenched the edge of the desk beside her. Then, with a voice that didn't seem to match her tiny frame, she sang, Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. At first, the students didn't react. Then came the shock. Her voice was pure, controlled, and soul-stirring. Not the wavering mumble they expected. This was rich, velvety, shaped by years of singing, alone, unseen, in her room, in church pews beside her mother, and to the humming rhythm of washing machines late at night. By the second verse, the classroom was dead silent. Phones were slowly lowered, eyes widened. Even Madison's smirk had faded into an open-mouthed stare. Alayna wasn't just singing. She was pouring herself into the room, her pain, her hope, her courage. Her voice cracked slightly on the line that saved a wretch like me, and in that moment everyone felt it. The loneliness, the grace, the truth. By the final, I once was lost, but now I'm found. There were students wiping tears they didn't expect. Even Mr. Halbert looked away for a second to blink hard. She opened her eyes. The class erupted, not in laughter, not in jeers, but in stunned silence. And then slowly a single pair of hands began to clap. It was Elijah, the usually quiet boy with ADHD, who sat in the back row. Then another student joined, and another. Within seconds, the room was filled with applause, hesitant at first, then roaring. Alayna didn't bow. She just smiled a small, knowing smile and walked back to her seat. Madison said nothing. Mr. Halbert finally found his voice. Well, he said, clearing his throat, I think we've just found our opening soloist. The class laughed, not the cruel kind. This time it was real. This time it was respect. What had started as a joke had become a moment they'd never forget. And none of them would ever look at Alayna Carter the same way again. When the final bell rang that Friday afternoon, Alayna didn't rush to pack her bag. While other students stormed out, laughing, chatting, and hurrying to their weekend plans, she sat quietly, still processing what had just happened. The classroom was emptying, but her heart was still full, overflowing with emotions she had locked away for years. Mr. Halbert approached her desk and sat beside her, breaking the silence gently. Alayna, he said, his voice low and thoughtful. That was One of the most beautiful renditions I've ever heard. You have a real gift. She looked up slightly startled. Compliments weren't something she received often. They felt foreign, like trying on clothes too fancy for your life. Thank you, she whispered, barely audible. I wasn't exaggerating when I said you should be our soloist, he smiled. And I meant it. I'd like you to sing at next week's parent assembly. What do you think? Her heart thumped. That meant standing in front of not just her class, but parents, teachers, the entire school. The thought terrified her. But the part that surprised her most was how much she wanted to say yes. I'll think about it, she said finally. As she walked home, the world around her looked the same. Same cracked sidewalks, same worn-down storefronts, same barking dog chained outside the gas station. But something in her had changed. She walked taller, chest open to the wind. She wasn't just the poor black girl who sat by the window anymore. When she entered the mobile home, her mother, Alayna Carter, was frying onions in a small skillet. The rich smell of spices filled the air, mixing with the faint aroma of fabric softener from the clothesline outside. You're late, Renee said without turning. Choir. No, Alayna replied. Well, yes, I sang today, in front of the class. Renee turned now, eyes wide. You baby, you sang. Alayna nodded slowly. They dared me, as a joke, but I did it anyway. Her mother walked over, wrapped her arms around her and held her tight. I bet they weren't laughing after that. Alayna grinned against her mother's shoulder. Later that night, she scrolled through her school's social feed out of habit. That's when she saw it, a video. Her singing. It was taken from the middle row of desks, grainy, shaky, but unmistakable. The caption read, "This girl shut down the bullies with just her voice. Our not sure respect." It already had over 800 likes and dozens of comments. Wait, who is she? I didn't know we had a real singer in our class, I cried at the end. Legit chills. Madison's face in the background, though. Alayna's hands shook as she scrolled. For the first time, she wasn't invisible online. She wasn't the punchline. She was the performance, the moment, the power. Across town, Madison watched the same video on her tablet in bed, her lips tight. She hadn't expected this. Her joke had backfired spectacularly, and now the very girl she tried to humiliate had become an online sensation. But the next day, something even more unexpected happened. Mr. Halbert received an email from a woman named Camille Bryant, a vocal coach from the Atlanta Youth Arts Conservatory. She had seen the video after it was shared by her niece who went to Willowbrook. Camille was intrigued. Then she was moved. Then she was in awe. She wrote, "Dear Mr. Halbert, I believe your student Alayna Carter may have a rare and extraordinary gift. I'd like to invite her to audition for our full scholarship program for underprivileged youth. We train voices like hers. Please let me know if she's open to the opportunity." The teacher printed the email and folded it carefully into an envelope addressed to Alayna's home. On Monday morning, the envelope found its way into her hands. That day, when Alayna walked into school, the stares were different. They weren't curious or condescending, they were respectful. Some classmates nodded at her. Others smiled. One girl, Bianca, even whispered, "You were amazing, by the way," before walking off shyly. Madison said nothing, but her silence was enough. It was defeat. In music class, Mr. Halbert handed her the envelope and said, "Read this when you're ready. It's important." She opened it slowly after class. Her mother read it that night. Then they both sat on the couch stunned. "A scholarship," Renee whispered. "To a real music school." Alayna couldn't stop smiling. "They want me to audition." Her mom clutched her hands. Baby, this could change everything. It was more than just a school. It was a door no one ever thought would open for a girl like her. And it had opened not because someone gave her a break, but because she had the courage to rise from ridicule and sing. Alayna couldn't sleep that night. She lay awake staring at the ceiling of the small bedroom she shared with her mom. The envelope with the conservatory's invitation sat on her nightstand like a glowing symbol, a ticket, a door, a dream. But with it came a kind of pressure she had never felt before. What if she failed? What if she got there and wasn't good enough? What if the girl they saw in that video was just a fluke, a one-time spark that couldn't survive a real stage? At breakfast the next morning, Renee placed a plate of scrambled eggs in front of her daughter, but paused before sitting down. She could see it in Alayna's eyes. The glow from the day before had dimmed, replaced by worry. "You okay, baby?" Alayna stared at the eggs, not hungry. "What if I mess up the audition?" Renee leaned on the table, her voice firm. "Then you mess up. That's part of life. But you won't know what you're made of until you show up." Alayna looked up, lips pressed into a thin line. I've been poor my whole life, she said quietly. What if I don't fit in there? What if they laugh at the way I dress or talk or where I come from? Renee's gaze didn't flinch. Then let them laugh, but you sing anyway. There was something about the way her mother said it, a calm fire behind every word. Alayna swallowed hard and nodded. That afternoon, Mr. Halberd stayed after school to help her prepare. They practiced breathing posture and stage presence. He gave her vocal warm-ups and exercises. He coached her through every note of Amazing Grace, as well as another song she might use, Rise Up by Andrew. By the end of the week, her nerves were still there, but so was something else. Determination. On Saturday morning, Alayna put on the nicest clothes she owned, a white blouse, a navy skirt, and the slightly scuffed flats her mother had cleaned with a toothbrush the night before. Her hair was in neat braids, and she carried a small folder with printed lyrics and sheet music. Renee had borrowed a friend's car to drive her to Atlanta. They said little during the ride. The silence wasn't awkward, it was sacred. When they pulled up in front of the Atlanta Youth Arts Conservatory, Alayna's eyes widened. The building was massive glass and marble with students in professional attire walking through the front doors like they belonged there. She didn't feel like she belonged there. Not yet. At the registration desk, a woman with silver glasses smiled warmly and handed her a numbered badge. You'll be auditioning in room B. Warm-up rooms are to your right. Renee hugged her just outside the audition hall. You go in there and be Alayna. That's all you ever need to be. Inside the waiting room, she found herself surrounded by other kids, some in blazers, others in ballet shoes or holding violin cases. A girl in a pink dress hummed effortlessly while another practiced scales. Some had parents fussing over them. Others were accompanied by private coaches. Alayna found a seat in the corner and closed her eyes. She wasn't here to compete. She was here to be heard. After what felt like an eternity, a woman in a black pantsuit stepped out of the room and called her name. Alayna Carter. Her legs shook as she stood. The hallway felt long, too long, but when the doors to room B opened, she stepped through them. 3 judges sat behind a long table. One of them, Camille Bryant, smiled as if she already recognized her. Good afternoon, Alayna. What will you be singing today? Amazing Grace, she said, her voice small. The pianist nodded and positioned his hands. The room was silent, and then she began. The first few notes trembled, but she steadied herself. With every phrase, her voice grew bolder, stronger. The walls didn't shrink her. The panel didn't intimidate her. She imagined her mother sitting on the other side of the wall smiling. She imagined every time she sang in church. Every note hummed while doing chores. Every whisper of a dream she'd ever had. By the final line, her voice was clear, resolute. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. She finished and lowered her hands. Silence. Then one of the judges slowly stood and said, You don't just sing, young lady, you testify. Another judge wiped her eye. Camille leaned forward. Alayna, thank you for reminding us why we do what we do. We'll be in touch very soon. As she walked out of the room, she didn't even notice the applause from the assistant outside. She just smiled. Alayna didn't speak much on the drive back. The audition was over, but her thoughts were louder than ever. Her fingers tugged nervously at the hem of her skirt as the car sped past rows of trees and gas stations. Her mom stole glances at her through the rearview mirror, but didn't press her. Renee understood that some silences needed space. The city lights of Atlanta faded behind them, replaced by the cracked sidewalks and worn storefronts of their small town. The sun had dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. That night, Alayna sat by the window of their mobile home, looking out into the quiet street. Her notebook lay open on her lap, but she hadn't written a word. The audition replayed in her mind again and again. The judges' faces. The moment her voice cracked, had they noticed the way one of them stood afterward? Was that good or bad? A week passed. Every day she checked the mailbox first, and every day there was nothing. Her anxiety built like a tower of cards stacked high and fragile. Then on a Thursday afternoon, as the spring breeze rustled through the chain-link fence near their home, she saw it. A large envelope, cream-colored, thick. The return address read Atlanta Youth Arts Conservatory. She froze. Then she ran bursting through the front door, waving the envelope. Mom, it's here. Renee dropped the laundry basket and rushed over. Well, open it, baby, go on. Alayna's hands trembled as she peeled back the flap. Her eyes scanned the first line. And then she gasped. Her lips quivered as she whispered, I got in. For a moment, everything stood still. Then Renee pulled her into a tight embrace, rocking back and forth. Tears streamed down both their faces. Alayna had earned a full scholarship. Tuition, housing, meals, vocal training, everything. Included in the envelope was a welcome letter signed by Camille Bryant herself and a handwritten note. Dear Alayna, what you carry is more than a voice. It's a story, a soul, a revolution wrapped in melody. We're honored to help you share it with the world. Camille. That night, they celebrated with a dinner of boxed mac and cheese and a candle lit in the center of the table. It wasn't fancy, but it was sacred. The next day at school, the news had already spread. Someone had seen Alayna's mom crying joyfully outside their home, hugging the envelope like it was made of gold. Someone else had shared it in the school group chat. By lunchtime, even the eighth graders were talking about it. When she walked through the hallway, something had changed. No more giggles behind her back. No more mockery. Only admiration, curiosity, respect. Bianca, the shy girl from 2 rows over, gave her a hug. Elijah fist bumped her. Even Madison stood frozen by her locker, eyes wide with a mixture of shock and perhaps regret. Alayna didn't slow down. She didn't need an apology. She had something far greater, proof that being different was never the problem. It was their vision that had been limited. After school, Mr. Halbert invited her into the music room. I heard he smiled. Congratulations. Alayna nodded, beaming. I want you to do one last thing before you leave Willowbrook, he said. Sing at the school's spring showcase. Not just for your class, for the whole school. Parents, teachers, community. Her eyes widened. But that's in the auditorium, on stage. He nodded. Exactly where you belong. She hesitated, then nodded back. The night of the showcase arrived. Alayna stood backstage wearing the same navy skirt and white blouse from her audition. But this time, she wasn't just the girl who stood up because of a dare. She was the girl who had earned her spotlight. As the curtain drew open and the spotlight hit the stage, a hush fell over the audience. Hundreds of faces stared back at her, students, families, faculty. Her mother sat in the front row, eyes glistening. She stepped up to the microphone. There was no backing track, no auto-tune, no elaborate stage, just her voice. And when she sang, time stopped. She didn't sing for the bullies. She didn't sing to prove anything. She sang for herself, for her mother, for every kid who had been made to feel small. Her voice soared, powerful, vulnerable, breathtaking. And when the last note faded into silence, the audience rose in unison. A standing ovation. One by one, people clapped, whistled, cheered. Even Madison's parents stood up. Alayna smiled, not because she had won anything, but because she had finally been seen. The first time Alayna stepped onto the campus of the Atlanta Youth Arts Conservatory, it felt like walking into a different world. The stone pathways were lined with manicured hedges and tall trees that cast dappled shadows across the grass. Elegant buildings with tall windows stretched across the property like quiet monuments to music, dance, and art. Students in black leotards stretched on the lawn. Others carried cello cases or music binders with confidence Alayna wasn't sure she'd ever feel. She clutched her tote bag tightly as her mom helped carry her single duffel to the dormitory. Everything she owned fit into 2 bags, closed toothbrush, her worn notebook, and the pair of headphones she used to block out the world when the trailer park got too loud. Inside the dorm lobby, a cheerful girl with braces and a clipboard smiled wide. Hi, you must be Alayna Carter. I'm Janelle's second-year vocal track. Welcome to AIX. Alayna offered a shy nod, grateful someone knew her name. Her mom squeezed her shoulder gently. You're going to be amazing, baby girl. I'll be here when you need me. She left soon after, not wanting to cry in front of the other students. Alayna watched her mother's car disappear through the main gate and swallowed the lump in her throat. Her room was small but neat, a bunk bed, a desk, and a view of the courtyard where other first-years were gathering. Her roommate hadn't arrived yet. That was probably a good thing. She needed a few minutes to breathe. That night, orientation was held in the main auditorium, a breathtaking concert hall with velvet seats and gold trim around the ceiling. A grand piano sat center stage under a warm spotlight. Camille Bryant, the vocal director, stood behind the podium. AYAC is not just a school, she said. It's a forge. You bring your raw voice and we will help you shape it into something powerful. But it takes effort, vulnerability, and resilience. Alayna's heart beat faster. She scanned the rows of unfamiliar faces. Everyone looked so confident, so polished, like they'd been performing since birth. She suddenly felt like the only kid who came from a place without sidewalks or internet that didn't cut out during storms. On the first day of class, her nerves reached a boiling point. She entered the vocal studio wearing the same navy skirt from her audition and a freshly ironed blouse. Other students were already inside chatting easily, some warming up their voices with dramatic trills and Italian phrases. She recognized a few from orientation, including a boy named Elliot, who had sung in 3 national competitions, and a girl named Sierra, who had already recorded 2 singles. Alayna found a spot in the back and kept her eyes low. Miss Camille entered a moment later, her presence commanding the room to silence. Let's begin with some scales. From the diaphragm, not the throat, I want to hear clarity and control. One by one, the students sang. When it was Alayna's turn, she hesitated. Camille turned gently, Alayna ready. She stepped forward, inhaled, and sang a simple arpeggio. It wasn't loud, but it was pure. Camille tilted her head, again. Alayna sang it again, stronger, fuller. A few students turned. Camille's lips curled into a knowing smile. Very good, controlled, honest. Let's keep going. By the end of the session, Alayna was no longer invisible. She hadn't said much, but her voice had spoken for her. Again. Later that week, Camille called her into her office. I've seen a lot of students with big voices, Alayna, she said, handing her a warm cup of peppermint tea. But not many with big souls. You don't just sing, you tell the truth. That's rare. Alayna looked down, blushing. I want you to start working on a solo piece for our fall recital. Something that speaks to who you are. Alayna blinked. Me, a solo. Yes, start thinking. What do you want to say to the world? That night, she sat by the window in her dorm notebook, open. The city lights blinked in the distance, and somewhere a train howled. She thought about her mother, about Willowbrook, about Madison's laughter, about the moment she opened that envelope. And she began to write. Not just lyrics, but the story of her life line by line as melody. By the second week at the Atlanta Youth Arts Conservatory, Alayna had started to settle in. Her days were filled with early morning warm-ups, music theory classes, vocal workshops, and stage movement drills. She learned Italian pronunciation, practiced diaphragm breathing, until she felt lightheaded and copied pages of sheet music into her notebook until her fingers ached. But she loved it. Every time she stepped into a rehearsal room, it felt like stepping into a dream she never thought she was allowed to have. And yet, not everyone welcomed her with open arms. Her talent wasn't in question. Even students who barely spoke to her couldn't deny that her voice had depth and soul far beyond her age. But that talent made her a target. One girl in particular, Savannah Monroe, daughter of a famous soprano and a board member of the school, had taken special interest in Alayna. And not in a good way. Savannah was poised, confident, always dressed in tailored performance blacks, and had a voice as crisp as snow, technically flawless, emotionally cold. She had been the school's top pick for the fall recital solo every year. Until now. Word had gotten out that Camille Bryant was leaning toward Alayna for the coveted solo, not just any song, but a new original piece that Alayna was composing herself. Savannah didn't take it well. At lunch, whispers followed Alayna wherever she went. She didn't even know what a pitch circle was last month. I heard she grew up in a trailer, literally. Just because she cried during Amazing Grace doesn't make her an artist. Alayna tried to ignore it, but words had weight, especially when whispered by polished mouths and painted lips. It all came to a head during a rehearsal session in the main vocal hall. Camille had gathered the soloists and potential soloists for a final round of evaluations. Alayna stood center stage, clutching her sheet music, while Savannah sat cross-armed in the front row, flanked by a few other elite students. Alayna inhaled deeply and began to sing. It wasn't Amazing Grace this time. It was her own song, a ballad she had written from scratch titled What They Can't See. It told the story of a girl who had been overlooked, misjudged, and mocked, but found strength in the silence they tried to cage her in. Her voice wavered at first, but by the second verse it bloomed. Rich, aching, real. She hit a long high note near the bridge, and the room went completely still, until Savannah scoffed, loudly. Camille turned sharply. Is there a problem? Savannah didn't flinch. I'm just wondering if this is a vocal audition or a therapy session. A few students laughed, quiet but sharp. Alayna's chest tightened. She looked down. Her fingers curled into the edges of her paper. Camille stood slowly. Let me be clear, she said, her voice as smooth and commanding as always. Art is always therapy, and anyone who confuses vulnerability with weakness will never understand true artistry. The room went dead silent. Savannah blinked. Camille turned to Alayna. Please continue. Alayna did, and this time she sang like the words had armor. Afterward, Camille clapped softly and said, We have our soloist. Savannah stormed out. That evening, Alayna returned to her dorm and found a sticky note on her door. Better hope your voice doesn't crack on stage, trailer girl. She stared at the note for a long moment, then peeled it off, tore it in half, and tossed it into the trash without a word. That night, she sat by her window again. Only this time she wasn't filled with doubt. She was burning with quiet fire. She opened her notebook, turned to a fresh page, and wrote at the top, "For everyone who ever laughed before they listened." Then she picked up her pencil and began composing her second song. The night of the fall recital arrived faster than Alayna expected. Her name was printed at the top of the program in clean serif font. What They Can't See, original composition by Alayna Carter. She read it over and over as she sat backstage clutching the folded paper between her palms. Her hands were damp. Her heart pounded like a drum line. She peeked through the velvet curtain at the packed audience, rows upon rows of polished shoes, shining phones, elegant parents, and stern-faced instructors. Somewhere in the third row, she spotted her mother. Renee Carter sat with her hands folded in her lap, eyes forward, a proud calm written all over her face. That steadiness was the anchor Alayna needed. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Behind her, students whispered. Savannah and a few others stood by the makeup mirror, their backs turned. They spoke in low tones, but Alayna didn't need to hear them. She could feel the doubt in the air. She's too raw. She's not trained enough. She's just a story, not a star. But she wasn't here to change their minds. She was here to speak her truth. Next up, the MC's voice echoed from the stage, a very special performance, an original composition by one of our newest voices. Please welcome Alayna Carter. Her legs felt like jelly, but her feet moved. She walked onto the stage slowly alone. The grand piano stood to her left, a single mic at the center. Behind her, the entire school choir sat in neat black rows watching. A hush fell over the auditorium. Alayna stepped into the spotlight. For a moment, the silence felt like a wall, immense, suffocating. She looked out at the audience. Some eyes were skeptical, some curious, some bored. And then, her eyes locked with her mother's. And that was all it took. She nodded to the pianist. The intro began, soft, rising, a delicate waltz that wrapped around the room like a gentle breeze. And then she sang. You think I'm quiet because I don't raise my hand, but I've been screaming through the silence louder than you can. Her voice was clear, controlled, deep. There were no gimmicks, no dramatic gestures, just soul. You dressed me in doubt, called it a favor, but I wear my story like shining armor. The audience leaned forward. Phones dropped to laps. Even Camille Bryant, seated at the end of the second row, stopped scribbling notes. It was a voice that didn't beg to be liked, it demanded to be heard. At the bridge, her voice cracked. Only slightly, but instead of panicking, she leaned into it. The emotion rolled through her like thunder. And that crack, it made it real. By the final verse, tears shimmered in her eyes. You don't see the girl who stayed up writing while the lights went out. You don't see the hands scrubbing floors, holding dreams, holding doubt. You don't see her, but she sees you, and she sings anyway. The final note hung in the air. Silence. Then one pair of hands began to clap. Camille. Then another, and then the entire room stood. A standing ovation. Alayna didn't bow. She simply stepped back, blinking at the blur of faces rising in front of her. She returned backstage just as Savannah walked past with crossed arms and tight lips. But Alayna didn't care anymore. Because on that stage, in front of that crowd, in the glow of that spotlight, she had taken back everything they ever tried to take from her. Her voice, her worth, her space. She had turned pain into poetry, doubt into defiance, fear into flame. And she wasn't done yet. The applause was still echoing in Alayna's ears as she stepped off stage, her heart hammering like a snare drum. She barely made it into the backstage hallway before she was enveloped in a wave of congratulations. Camille Bryant was the first to reach her. The renowned director rarely displayed outward emotion, but tonight her eyes shone with pride. Alayna, she said, gripping her by both shoulders. You didn't perform. You moved people. That's what art is supposed to do. Alayna smiled, still catching her breath, still grounded by the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Then came other instructors, students, even faculty she hadn't met before. Some offered quick handshakes, others emotional hugs. One teacher simply whispered, "Thank you." Savannah never appeared. But Alayna wasn't looking for her anymore. Her mom was next. Renee burst through the side hallway, arms open wide. "Oh, my baby," she whispered as she pulled Alayna into the tightest embrace. "You had the whole room crying, even the principal, and you hit that note like your life depended on it." "I think it did," Alayna whispered back, both of them laughing through tears. They lingered in the hallway for a while until a staff member tapped Alayna's shoulder. "There's someone asking for you in the green room," the woman said. "She's not on the guest list, but I think you'll want to meet her." Alayna hesitated. She entered the small green room, slowly, still in her navy skirt and white blouse. Seated in the corner was a woman in her early 40s, stylish but not flashy, a tailored blazer, vintage earrings, and the kind of presence that made a room tilt slightly in her direction. "Hi," the woman said, rising. "Alayna Carter." "Yes. I'm Robin LaRue," she said, extending her hand. "Talent scout, independent producer. I represent emerging young artists across the East Coast. And tonight you gave me chills." Alayna blinked. Robin smiled. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can count on one hand how many voices have stopped me in my tracks. Yours, it wasn't just sound. It was a story, a protest, a prayer. Something in that theater changed when you opened your mouth." Alayna didn't know what to say. Her throat, once full of song, was now dry. Robin reached into her purse and handed over a sleek black card with silver lettering. "I'd love to talk more with you and your mother. There are scholarships we can explore, development programs, summer intensives. I know it's a lot, but if you're willing, I'd like to help take your voice beyond this stage." Alayna took the card with shaking fingers. She whispered, "I never thought anyone like you would see someone like me." Robin's voice softened. "The world doesn't need more perfection, sweetheart. It needs more truth, and you have it." That night, Alayna lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her earbuds still in, but no music playing. She had sung her story and the world had listened. She wasn't dreaming anymore. She was becoming. 2 months later, Alayna stood in front of a mirror in a practice studio in New York City, sweat trickling down her back, her heart racing. She was at the LaRue Summer Intensive, a highly selective 8-week training program for young vocalists. There were only 20 students selected from hundreds across the country, and she was one of them. But now she wasn't the only standout. She was one among many. The first day she walked into the studio and saw it instantly, the effortless confidence in how the other students moved, the way they joked with instructors like old friends, the branded water bottles from elite music academies, the effortless riffs and vocal runs during warm-ups. Alayna kept her head low. She wasn't sure what scared her more, not fitting in or being seen as the charity pick. Robin LaRue greeted her personally on day one. "I brought you here for a reason," she said. "Don't try to impress. Try to feel. That's what makes you dangerous." But in the weeks that followed, it became clear this wasn't Willowbrook anymore. This was competition. Students were ranked after every performance. Feedback was given aloud. Some instructors were brutally honest. One of them, a former Broadway soprano named Genevieve, once told a girl flat out, "You don't belong in this room." Alayna worked harder than ever. She woke up before dawn to rehearse. She stayed after class to review her sheet music. She skipped social events. Her voice improved technically, but her confidence, it trembled. The cracks started to show during her third-week assessment. She had chosen to perform a stripped-down version of Rise Up by Andra Day, a song she loved. But under the harsh white lights and the weight of 20 silent peers watching from folding chairs, her voice wobbled. She missed a note, then another. Her hands trembled. She couldn't meet the eyes of the judges when she finished. The room was silent. Then Genevieve leaned forward and said, "You have a gorgeous tone, but no control. Emotion without technique is like fire without focus. It burns everything, but gets you nowhere." Alayna nodded, heart sinking. That night, she almost called her mom to say she wanted to quit. But instead, she opened her notebook, the same one she had carried since Willowbrook, and began writing. Not lyrics this time, but a list. A list of why she started. A list of every name they had called her. A list of every time she had been underestimated. She wrote until her fingers cramped. And at the bottom of the page, she wrote, "I didn't come here to be perfect. I came here to be undeniable." The next morning, something shifted. She stopped trying to mimic the others. She started singing like she had something to say, not prove. In week 5, she performed an original piece again, Echoes of the Trailer Park, a haunting a cappella song she had written about her childhood nights, listening to her mom cry through the thin walls. It brought 3 judges to tears. Even Genevieve stood and said, "That was art." By week 7, she was no longer the quiet girl from Georgia. She was the voice everyone came early to hear. On the final night of the program, Robin pulled her aside. "You were never supposed to blend in," she said. "You were supposed to burn brighter." She handed Alayna a folder. Inside was a contract, a mentorship agreement, performance bookings for youth showcases, and a letter of intent from a music publishing company that wanted to explore her as a songwriter. Alayna gasped, "Is this real?" Robin smiled, "Only if you say yes." Alayna looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking anymore. That night, she sang her final showcase song beneath glowing stage lights in downtown Manhattan. A small crowd of industry scouts and families filled the room. Her mother had flown in just to watch. As the music swelled and she sang the last note, Alayna knew something deep and unshakable. She wasn't chasing a dream anymore. She was living in it, and she had earned every step. The air smelled the same. Alayna stepped through the double doors of Willowbrook Middle School, now taller, older, and dressed in a sleek black blazer over a simple white blouse. Her curls were pulled back neatly, her shoes polished, and a gold treble clef necklace dangled just above her collarbone, a gift from Robin LaRue after she signed her first publishing deal. It had been exactly 2 years since that fateful afternoon when Madison dared her to sing in front of the class. 2 years since she stood trembling beside a chipped desk and sang her soul out. 2 years since everything changed. Now she was walking back through those same halls, but this time as a guest speaker. The school had invited her for their annual Arts Inspiration Day. Her story had made local headlines. Her face had been on the conservatory website. Her original songs had quietly found their way onto streaming platforms, small listens, but real ones. But to be honest, none of that compared to the knot in her stomach right now. She paused outside room 214, her old music class. Inside, a new group of students sat whispering at their desks, eyes flicking between the door and their phones. Is she really coming? Wait, she went here. I thought she was like, famous now. Then the door opened. Alayna stepped inside. At first silence, the kids just stared. Then one girl whispered, "That's her!" And another clapped. It rippled until the whole room joined in, awkward and unsure but genuine. Mr. Halberd stood at the front a little grayer, but still smiling. He motioned her toward the front with that same gentle kindness she remembered so well. "Class," he said, "this is Alayna Carter, one of the most powerful voices I've ever heard." She sat right there. He pointed at the back corner, and now, well, she's here to tell you her story. Alayna took a deep breath and began. She didn't sugarcoat it. She told him about growing up in a trailer park wearing hand-me-downs, getting free lunch tickets. She told him about being laughed at, mocked, ignored, and then about the day someone tried to make her the punchline, and she chose to sing instead. The room was still. She looked around. Some kids were leaning forward. A few had tears in their eyes. Then a hand went up. A boy with braces and nervous eyes asked, "Did you ever want to quit?" Alayna smiled. "So many times. Even now there are days I wonder if I'm good enough." But here's the thing. When the world tells you to shrink, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take up space. Another hand, "What happened to the girl who made fun of you?" Alayna hesitated, then chuckled softly. "Madison, she messaged me recently actually. Said she saw one of my performances online. Said she was sorry. I told her I forgave her. But I didn't sing that day because I wanted her apology. I sang because I deserved to be heard." More hands, more questions. And then finally a request. "Can you sing something now?" Mr. Halberd nodded from the piano. She walked up beside him. No mic, no lights, no cameras. Just her voice. She sang the opening lines of What They Can't See, the song she wrote at the conservatory, the one that started it all. As her voice soared through the room, eyes widened, mouths parted. By the final note, the room was silent again. Then a single clap. Then another. Then all of them. She didn't need a standing ovation this time. She had something better. Legacy. As she walked out of the building that day, the wind brushing gently through the trees, Alayna glanced up at the sky. Same clouds. Same town. But everything had changed. And she had never been more certain of one thing. She was born to be heard.